Okay, welcome to our New York Giants Preservation Society meeting for tonight. It is Wednesday, March 20th, with Susan Slusser, a longtime writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, who's working for the Giants, the good guys now. Just some housework, house cleaning, whatever you want to call it. Next week, we will have Roger Munter. He'll be discussing the Giants farm system. With our last meeting regarding the upcoming season. That'll be on Wednesday. So make sure you're there for that. And next Thursday is opening day. June 15th, Father's Day. If anybody's in Staten Island, it's Bobby Thompson night there. So they're giving a bobblehead of Bobby riding the Staten Island ferry in his high school uniform, which I believe was number 23 as well. Let's all welcome Susan Slusser to the New York Giants Preservation Society. Like I said, Susan's been working at the Chronicle for almost 30 years, a real trailblazer. It's the Baseball Writers Association of America's president. 2011, Susan, was it? Somewhere around there.
Yeah, 12, 13, something like that.
Something like that. Anyway, Susan is going to just give us her very brief discussion on where she sees the team going. Then whoever wants to ask a question, you'll ask your question. And then Susan has to take care of family and work business. Okay. So let's all give a round of applause to Susan Slusser. Susan, before I turn it over to you, just so you know, we have people from everywhere across the country in this group. The group was formed, and basically 95% of us are diehard Giant fans, and that's because of one person, Willie Mays. Gentlemen and ladies, when you ask your question, introduce yourself and say where you're from so Susan has an idea where you're talking from. Susan, what about the 2025 Giants?
Well, first of all, thanks so much, Gary. Thanks for the invite. Sorry, I have to cut a little short today at the Giants' day off, but we writers don't really get days off in spring training, and so I've got two stories to write, and I'm monitoring a family situation back home. So it's really a pleasure to be with you guys. I only ever heard great things over the years, so I'm excited to be here. So as far as the team, this is a really great year to be talking to you guys because it's going to be nonstop interesting, whether they're good, bad, or back to just being kind of mediocre like last year because of Buster Posey. I mean, I think he's brought something really different. I think he has a plan. We've already kind of gotten a little bit of a sense of that. You know, he wants guys who are sort of throwbacks, sort of, they can't be all like him as players, but sort of in personality, approach. He wants, these are things that you can't really quantify. So I'm not sure the previous front office, which was very analytics heavy, would be necessarily looking for things that Buster talks about, like grit and winners and, guys that just don't give up. So he goes out and signs Willie Adames, who I automatically qualifies for that because he played in 161 games last year and told Bob Melvin first thing, like, I don't want that, 162nd game off. I want to play in all 162. And he's a leader and he's been really clearly making a difference for the team this spring. And he's a two-way shortstop. So, I mean, it's kind of really just an ideal situation to add here and hit him. And then obviously Justin Verlander, who you talk about a winner and a guy who's sort of pretty relentless, that he qualifies as that. So, can you make a team in basically Buster Posey's image? I don't think that's entirely possible, but I think he's going to give it a go. And that makes this team interesting. And I think they don't have the most talent in the division. They can't. They're in a division with the Dodgers, and the Padres are stacked like they always are. And Arizona has that great young, very exciting team, and they're fast. That's maybe one of the reasons they didn't decide to spend quite so much money this year. Although I do think that their payroll is going to be up around 200 million again. I've seen it reported. I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but you guys have probably seen it reported as under 180 million. Those estimates don't take into account that they're still paying This year, Blake Snell's signing bonus from last year, which was delayed to this year, which takes it up really, I think 200 million, right around there. Anyway, so yeah, they're in a very strong division. They could be superb and still not sniff the playoffs in the NL West, but I think they'll be more watchable because they're going to emphasize pitching and defense, situational hitting, moving runners over, maybe even stealing some bases here, like really putting pressure on opposing pitchers, kind of more traditional baseball. And I'm looking forward to seeing kind of how that translates during the regular season because we've seen it here in spring training and they've got the major league's best record in spring training. Totally meaningless, yes. Sometimes great spring training teams just are absolute flops during the regular season, but they're doing the right things. So go hit me with your questions.
All right, I'm gonna be Brett Butler today, leading off. Better atmosphere, does that equate to more victories? Because with the exception of a few players, it's basically the same players that we've seen, the last year.
I do think so. That's another one of those things that you can't really quantify, team chemistry. And I've had many a debate with sort of the analytic types, starting with Billy Beane all those years. I covered the A's. He would say like chemistry is a factor of winning. It comes from winning. There are certainly a lot of players and managers who would tell you the opposite, that chemistry really is important. My friend Joan Ryan wrote a book, Intangibles, about it, which I'm sure many of you have seen and probably read or listened to. I think that might be the difference. Willy Adames is going to have something to do with that. Verlander, certainly when it comes to the pitching staff, where he's just a natural leader, will have something to do with that. So even if you only add two free agents, one of whom is 42, a little bit of an unknown from a performance perspective, I think that does potentially make a difference. And then bringing back internally a lot of former Giants like Randy Wynn taking over player development, people getting promoted from within, JP Martinez to pitching coach, Pat Burrell to hitting coach, the number one hitting coach. They were both assistants last year. I think those things, all of them can kind of combine for better clubhouse chemistry. And something as simple as Matt Chapman has a full spring now with the team, when last year came in last second and kind of, you don't get a chance to really sort of make much of a difference with your teammates when you come in last second like that. Same with Blake Snell for his, however people feel about him. He was very late to the party last year, which didn't help.
Giants.
Wonderful. Again, when I call on you, one question, state your name, where you're from, and then when we're all done, if Susan still has a few more minutes, we'll take more questions. Other than that, let's go. Mars, you're up.
Thank you, Susan, for joining us. I read your column often. I happen to cancel the Chronicle when they didn't even put the box scores in the for the next day for a day game. But my question is, what do you feel about Willie Mays Field at Snorkel? I call it Snorkel Park, and a salary cap in baseball.
So naming the field after Willie Mays, the way the A's did the field at the Coliseum after Ricky Henderson, I don't know if anybody would be opposed to that. I'm sure you guys have talked to John Shea on occasion. He is our Willie Mays. Well, not now. He left us for the SF Standard, but for many years he was our Willie Mays expert. He's been pushing for a museum too in that Mission Rock development, which I would love to see. I can't imagine people being opposed to that, but you never know. There's layer upon layer of bureaucracy. And what was your second question?
About the salary cap. Are you in favor
salary
of a
cap?
salary
It's not going to happen. I mean, I think the next labor negotiations, I think we will see potentially a long labor stoppage. If the owners want to implement that, the players will walk, and I don't think they will accept it.
Let them walk. Let them walk.
Well, we could have a whole season with no baseball, which would be unfortunate. My stance on this, and I'm a union member, is if the money wasn't there, they wouldn't be paying it. So I'd rather have it go to the players than the owners because they're the one providing us the entertainment and the hard work. But opinions, of course, can differ.
It's out of hand. Thank you, Susan.
Mars, tell Susan where you are in California.
Oh, I'm in Pacific Heights. I was a
Ah,
New York Giants fan,
Okay,
lived in
that's enough, Morris.
Manhattan.
Thanks. Tom, you're up.
I'm Tom O'Doul. I'm up in Sonoma County in Rohnert Park. I like to call it Roden Park.
that's funny.
Okay.
I like that.
Susan, I asked Barry Bloom the same question last week. What's your take on the starting pitching rotation?
It's maybe a little bit different than what we were expecting. First of all, Verlander looks terrific. It's tough to handicap starting pitching, right? But there's so many injuries these days. You wind up seeing, 8, 10 different pitchers over the course of the year. Right now, assuming full health, I think they're in good shape, but I don't think Kyle Harrison is probably in the rotation to start the season because he has not looked right. His velocity was down last year. It continues to be down even now when he's healthy. He was dealing with a couple different things last year. He's just not effective or as effective as I think he would like and the team would like pitching at
I
91,
agree.
92. But Hayden Birdsong and Landon Root have both been outstanding. So I
Very good
think
stuff.
they have good options, even if they don't. But then you've got Logan Webb at the top. Robbie Ray looks as good as anybody I've seen in a long time. He just looks tremendous. And then he added a changeup he learned from Tarek Skubal. So I think they're in very good shape. Jordan Hicks I think their best hope for Jordan Hicks is that he has the kind of first half or at least first month or two that he did last year. And if he falls off, then they've got, Birdsong, Roop, and maybe Harrison has figured things out by then.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Rothschild.
Hi, my name is Steve Rothschild, originally from New York, and I live in Surprise, Arizona. Susan, you and I had, I don't know, 3 or 4 conversations before COVID. I tried to get you to
Yeah.
speak to my sports group again. So kudos to Gary for pinning you down. One question, 2 parts.
Mhm.
Buster Posey, first ballot Hall of Famer, and who's
Yes.
going to be the opening day center fielder for the Giants this year?
Ooh, that's a toughie. Yeah, I think Buster is. You know what? I certainly the voting trends the way we've seen them in past years, recent years. I think he's probably first ballot, but not everyone agrees with me. So maybe that's borderline. He would eventually get in. Certainly would hope. I mean, he's for me, he's an all-time great. And
Is Lee going to be ready? Is my question for the opening day.
yeah, center field. Yeah. Lee, I mean, we just have backs are weird. You guys know, I'm sure a few of you have probably had back issues at times. It's back
Right, yeah.
spasms. He's getting treated for it. No structural damage, but backs can be tricky. I'd put that at 50-50. The good thing is Grant McCray has had a nice spring. He looks very good. He's got lots of speed. He's a very good center fielder. They're covered if he's not ready, but I think Jung-Hoo Lee is really important for their season. So they need him back sooner than later, even if he's not on we spend so much time talking about the opening day roster, and you guys know it changes within a day or two sometimes of opening day. So sometimes it gets a little silly, but
Thank
the hope is he's back.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Bill Clink.
Bill Clink, Sun City, Arizona, also known as Fun City.
Bill, talk up. You're very low, Bill.
Palo Alto.
Bill, talk up.
I can hear you,
Talk
Bill.
up. I'll shout. Bill
Good.
Clink, Sun City, formerly of Palo Alto. A simple question for you, Susan.
Mhm.
Many of us like the old school players. Certainly, we're happy that Buster's back. Where in the mix, if not now, down the road, do we see Will Clark in his relationship with the Giants?
Well, Will's been a special advisor. He's continuing in that role. I mean, if you look at their, kind of the hierarchy of the front office, he's right up there. He's around and he does work with hitters some. I do recall a few years ago he had some ideas for Joey Bart, and I think the coaching staff was not quite on board with his ideas for Joey Bart. So sometimes there's headbutting. That's the case with all of the guys that kind of come in as guest instructors. I think teams, generally speaking, all teams would like their guest instructors to help out sort of when asked, but not sort of steer people away from the things that the team are telling them, which makes sense. But yeah, Will's around. We see him in the clubhouse pretty regularly. You can't miss him. I mean, you hear him coming from a mile away. So, and obviously he and Bob Melvin are friends going way back. So we might see more of him than less.
You don't see him as hitting coach down the line?
Oh, hitting coach? No, I don't think so. He might be a little too old school for them. And it's not something he's done at a professional level.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much.
Susan, just for your edification, we had Will on as a guest speaker, and he spoke from his truck after shooting deer in Arkansas. So,
That tracks.
Ken, you are up. Ken Hogarty.
Hi, Susan. My name is Ken Hurdy. I live in the East Bay, longtime educator and principal of Sacred Heart Cathedral in the city, so 45 years there. My question has to do, you were writing this week about money, and obviously follow the money is important in all sports, but do you think short-term and long-term, what do you think about Giants ownership? You have the LeCoq and basketball, the great 49er dynasty with great owners who would spend money. Do you think all this is going to be good long-term and short-term, the 10% sales, the real estate, et cetera, et cetera?
It's just the way all sports are going. I'm not sure how many people know this. I think there was a little bit of concern voiced when, a private equity firm jumps in with 10%, but baseball has some pretty strict limits on private equity. It can't be more than 30% total, no matter how many private equity firms are involved with your team. They can't ever have a managing partner. They can't have a managing say. And the Dodgers have private equity in there. Like almost every major league team has some private equity now. It's everywhere. The Premier League, the Fenway Group owns Liverpool. This is the way pro sports are going. And not for any sort of bad reason. These are not strip asset things the way you think of sometimes when you hear private equity. Private equity is getting involved because nothing appreciates like pro sports franchises. It's great business for private equity. So teams that might not be necessarily liquid, because as previously mentioned, they are paying some pretty steep salaries, get a cash influx. They can take care of some immediate needs, and like a cash call really that doesn't involve the rest of the owners is always appreciated. Even if the rest of the owners' shares are now worth a little bit less because they've added, nobody was bought out. Sometimes, of course, people are bought out. This was not the case in this one. I think they're willing to trade that sometimes for a little bit more liquidity.
Thank you, Ken. Paul Ellis Graham.
Susan, thank you very much. I'm a retired teacher. I split my time between Marlborough, New York, and I'm in Savannah, Georgia for the winter.
Oh, beautiful.
Just a very quick commentary. The Boston Celtics were sold today to a private equity firm, the largest purchase of most money ever paid for a professional sports team. So
there you go.
Right, that's the way they're going. My question is, with the Giants being really having a great spring, is this something that you see going forward for us? Or is it something that maybe, it's spring that doesn't count? What do you think?
I think it shows a lot of good things, and certainly good vibes go a ways. It shows that guys are learning to play well together. It's so hard to really project anything off it because especially the first half, 2/3 of the games, a lot of the games are played by minor leaguers and non-roster guys. Like, for instance, Ismael Munguia was the Giants' top hitter last spring. A lot of times it's players like that who really shine and can maybe help the team a little bit more than maybe we might expect to see them down the line. But there's nothing wrong with having a good spring. I think it can set a tone. And I think that might be the case this year because it's positive vibes everywhere you look.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. Norm Coleman.
Hi, Susan. I'm Norm Coleman. I'm in Millbrae, California, right here in the Bay Area. I've got to follow up on the private equity question. I read that one of the private equity firms has interest in like multiple baseball teams and basketball teams.
Yep.
Why are they allowed to do that? Isn't there some kind of a conflict of interest involved?
Yeah, I actually am curious about that. And I don't really know the answer. I guess they're spreading the wealth and trying to get as much value as humanly possible. When I was covering the A's, Billy Beane was, he's in not semi-retirement, but he's sort of like stepped away into sort of an advisory role. But even from there, the commissioner would not allow him to also work for a private equity firm that was entirely sports-based, Red Ball. So baseball is riding herd on this. I'm just not quite sure what the criteria is when it comes to multiple teams being invested in. since they don't have any sort of majority say and really no say whatsoever, they're just investors. I assume that's why there's no conflict of interest, but it is interesting. I noticed the same thing.
But thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Susan, you got time for maybe 3 or 4 more?
Sure.
Wonderful. Jim Mully, you are up.
Hi, Susan. Jim Mully from Rochester, New York. It's western part of New York State. I'm really excited about the bullpen. I look and I see 10, 12 guys that I think are major league pitchers, and we certainly don't have room for that. And if Harrison gets pushed out of the starting rotation, do you see it AAA or bullpen? And if you just comment a little bit about our bullpen, what you've seen this spring.
Yeah, I like the bullpen. They had a little bit of almost addition by subtraction. Don't tell anybody, Tyler. Don't tell Tyler Rogers I'm saying this. Taylor Rogers just didn't seem quite a fit up there, and for what they were paying him was not producing what they expected. It kind of opens things up for some other guys. Eric Miller obviously was very good in a left-handed role last year. They may or may not go with a second lefty even, so that's TBA. But they brought in some really good non-roster guys. Joel Peguero has been really astonishing. You know, he throws hard. A couple other the non-roster guys throw hard. And then the group they have on the 40-man is all really, really strong too, with more coming. I think Randy Rodriguez has this stuff to be, you know, a closer down the line. Camilo Doval, former closer, looks like he's back locked in. He wasn't throwing strikes last year, and nobody could quite figure out why. He's throwing strikes again now. They've had this kind of fun competition where every day the number of strikes are posted in the clubhouse for everybody to see. And weirdly, the number of strikes thrown has skyrocketed this spring, and they're among the fewest walks in the league. And that's been interesting. So I love that. If you have Ryan Walker, Camilo Doval, Tyler Rogers, and then you kind of think about the number of looks they have. John Jelly, being as tall as he is, and you know, the crossfire with Walker, and a guy coming from down under like Tyler Rogers. You know, that's been the case for a while, but they've got a couple other guys. Joey Lucchese, who's from Newark, California, and many of you might remember from the Mets. He's got that curve, which is also a real deception pitch. It's it's almost more like a slider than a curveball, I think, but a very, very slow slider. He would bring another interesting look too. So and he's left-handed. So they've got so many good possibilities. I do like the bullpen. And if somebody's not working, they have the depth to maybe make some changes, and it could even be better.
Do you see Harrison being part of the bullpen or going down if he doesn't make it?
No, he's a starter, and I think especially he's so young. You know, he was a high school draft pick. I think that you go with guys who are starters as long as you're convinced they're starting. He just has the arsenal to really be a good starter. And once they figure out the velocity thing, that's the ticket for him as a starter anyway. It probably would be for as a reliever, to tell you the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Charles, you're up.
Yeah, Charles, I live in San Francisco my whole life.
Oh,
hi. I have a question for you. What kind of, I don't know if you have access to this or no, what the heck happened with that beach thing last year and taking out, you know, all of our plaques that were on McCovey Cove? And I mean,
yeah, so they're back. They had to redo them. So John Shea wound up kind of covering that for us, but we both heard about it at the same time. It's pretty outrageous that people could purchase plaque. I mean, what a misfire by the Giants. Really tone deaf to destroy a bunch of plaques that are in honor of people's memory and then replace it with like a
it's one of the few good things it's one of the few good things I have from my ex-wife.
I wish Sean had talked to you for that story, because that is hilarious. But yeah, they're back. They are installed across the cove. I actually saw them recently. I did a walk around of the whole Mission Rock for the real estate story that I did with our real estate story writer, Laura Waxman. They are back, so you can go see them there. And
because I've heard they're going to open up back on opening day. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, they're there, and they're actually reinstating that program now. I think they're doing a 25th anniversary opportunity for people to purchase bricks. So yeah.
And are they going to fix the McCovey statue and put it back where it was and put the plaques of the Willie Mack Award winners there too?
I think that is the plan, but don't hold me to
Okay.
that.
Okay. That was just so ridiculous. And it,
Yeah.
pardon
no.
the phrase, it really pissed me off.
Yeah, you were. I think you make a purchase in good faith, especially when
Right.
it's honoring anybody, and they need to come through with that.
Yep.
Thank you, Charles. Harvey.
Thank you.
Susan, my name is Harvey Weinberg. I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I live in Nassau County, which is just outside New York City. I saw my first game when I was 8 at the Polo
Nice.
Grounds, July
Wow.
10th, 1954. I'm constrained to correct one thing. When Will Clark zoomed into our meeting, he was on the Arkansas border. He had just spent the day shooting wild boar. He wasn't shooting deer, Gary.
I'm sorry,
He was shooting-
Harvey.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry. God.
Here's my question,
I'm
Susan.
proud.
Here's my question.
Yeah.
Will any ground balls get through the left side of the Giants' infield this year?
Not a
Yeah.
lot, but probably a few. They're both really, Willie Adames is they're both great two-way players. Obviously, Chapman's superb third baseman. Willie Adames is probably not the top defensive shortstop in the league, but he's in the top 10, which for a hitter like that is amazing. So, he's a few will go through. It's going to remind you of probably some of the Crawford years, I think. It's going to be fun.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Absolutely.
Did anybody who wanted to ask a question not ask a question? We have to cut it short tonight. Usually it'd be more questions, and Susan is such a wonderful writer and reporter that we would love to spend more time with her. Anybody else who did not ask a question? Mike Berlin, you are last tonight.
Thank you. You may have asked this already. I'm drafting Saturday. Am I taking Birdsong? Is he going to be that starter?
It's between him and Roop, and honestly, I couldn't handicap it for you right now. One will probably be in the bullpen, in which case it might be Roop, because obviously he pitched some there last year. But Birdsong pitched in the bullpen when he was in college, so it could be one or the other. Or I asked Bob Melvin this yesterday, like, wouldn't you want to keep whoever doesn't make it starting so they're available to start when needed? And he said there is a lot to be said for that. So is it possible to go 50-50-50? I don't know if the math works on that, but it'll be one or the other, I think. So it won't be Harrison. It really could come right down to the very end. I think all three are in action on Sunday at Sacramento.
Gotcha. And will Verlander give me my money's worth?
I sure hope so. And I think the Giants really very much hope so. He's looked good so far. The thing about Verlander that I always remind people is that at the age of 39, he was 1 year removed from Tommy John surgery. 1 year, and he won the Cy Young. That just does not happen, no matter what the age. Young guys don't do that. That's just astonishing. So I would never bet against him, ever.
Gotcha.
Is Verlander's wife willing to sign autographs?
We haven't seen her this spring. There was a rumor she was going to be out at one of the when he was pitching at minor league camp, and she didn't show. So we were all a little disappointed. But they told us not to take pictures if she did show. So I'm guessing she will not be signing autographs.
Susan, we're going to leave you with one last personal question.
Sure.
So you're doing this for years and years. How have things changed for women when you started to what today is all about?
Well, I hope I don't tick anybody off on this call. Initially, when I first started covering baseball, it was a little rough because people weren't necessarily used to it. There was some pushback. The last, maybe even 20 years, it's been great, and there are more and more, like, tons of women that cover. I mean, we have a big group that gets together at the winter meetings, and a group that gets together in the Cactus League of women writers, and of course there are lots of broadcasters as well too. But in the current political climate, it seems like it's become people feel pretty free to express their disdain for women working in sports, period. So I've been getting a lot more of that than I'm used to. So if anybody knows anybody that's out there doing dumb stuff like that, tell them to stop, because we're all professionals. We wouldn't be here if we weren't.
All right. I'm going to be honest with you. We wish we had you for the normal length of time, but we are so grateful that you were able to come by for the short period of time. We hope, all of your work issues, family stuff is taken care of, and Thank you so much. Let's all give it up for Susan Slusser.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Gary. Thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it.
It
You
was
guys
wonderful
are
having you here. I'm going to stay around if anybody wants to talk about Giant baseball, but I'm going to shut off the the recorder, so nobody says anything bad about the Giants. That picks people up. So,
Thank you,
Bye,
Susan.
guys. Thank you so
be good,
much.
Susan.
Susan,
All right.
thank
Bye,
you.
Thank you,
guys.
Susan.
All right, let's
See you at the
pause.
ballpark.